Hey guys, I have a different type of video for you today than what you're probably used to on my channel. There was a Nintendo Direct yesterday and they announced a ton of new games like Mario & Luigi Brothership, Super Mario Party Jamboree, and Metroid Prime 4. If you're new to my channel, or even if you've seen videos on my channel before, you'll probably know that most of my videos are over the Fortnite storyline. But I did do a video in the past that's part of a giant collective Nintendo universe I'm trying to put together, including one massive timeline of games from interconnected franchises from Nintendo, like the Mario and Zelda franchises, since Mario and Link have appeared in multiple games together, and their games cross over through the Dream Realm in Super Mario Bros. 2 and Link's Awakening. And because of that, the Zelda timeline is super important to that theory, and with the Direct yesterday, we had an announcement of a new Zelda game, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Echoes of Wisdom is a game where you play Zelda on a quest to save Link and stop the rifts that opened up all over Hyrule, teaming up with a fairy named Tri and using a staff to create objects to traverse the kingdom, solve puzzles, and slay enemies. And as of right now, we know very little of the game, but I wanted to get ahead of the curve and try to make my predictions and thoughts on where the game might take place in the timeline. Real quick though, make sure you guys like and subscribe to help my channel grow and so you don't miss out on content from me, but let's get right into it. Growing up, I watched a ton of YouTube videos that tried to put together the Zelda timeline. As a kid, I played a bunch of Zelda games and wanted to understand how the story connects between the games and the order that I should play them in. Then I came to find out that nobody really knew the order. Sure, there are some games that are easy to put together, like Majora's Mask being a sequel to Ocarina of Time, but besides that, we didn't have much to go off of. The conclusion most theorists did come to, though, was that there are two timelines, the child timeline and adult timeline. I'm gonna link a video from years ago from a YouTuber I used to watch just to show you guys what it was like back then in the early theorizing days of YouTube. But for anybody who isn't familiar with the Zelda franchise, in Ocarina of Time, Link travels back and forth in time to stop the evil villain, Ganondorf. Through time travel shenanigans, multiple timelines were created. One where adult Link defeats Ganondorf and travels back in time to his childhood, leaving the adult timeline without a Link to defend it, so it gets flooded to protect the kingdom, leading into Wind Waker. In the child timeline Link returns to, he warns the royal family about Ganondorf and his evil plans, so Ganondorf gets imprisoned and sealed away, leading into Majora's Mask and later Twilight Princess. The timeline split works very similarly to how it does in Avengers Endgame, so if you've seen that, it's pretty much the same thing. But anyways, Nintendo would later release a book called Hyrule Historia, showing off artwork, a manga, and notes from the series creators, along with an official Zelda timeline, breaking it into 4 main sections: the section before the timeline split, then after the split with the previously mentioned adult timeline, child timeline, and fallen hero timeline. The fallen hero timeline is one nobody really considered before that point. This timeline was caused if Link died during the course of Ocarina of Time, and as I was writing this, I kind of realized that the whole branch doesn't really make sense. It was caused if Link dies. If Link dies, then the adult timeline and child timeline can't exist, but if Link lives, then the fallen hero timeline can't exist. My brain just might have been doing a stupid last night when I was trying to think of that, or think through that, but the reasoning behind the part of the timeline makes it seem like a huge what-if scenario. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong, because now I'm just kind of second-guessing everything, but for the sake of this video and the timeline, I'm not going to question that anymore. But to get back on track, we have the official timeline. Over the course of the following decade, we got a few more Zelda games. These games got added onto the Fallen Hero timeline, no problem, but Nintendo decided to switch the order of Link's Awakening and the Oracle games, and this brings me to my first point in figuring out the placement of Echoes of Wisdom. Right now I'm trying to determine where it's placed on this timeline, but Nintendo could easily go and switch the order of half the games out of nowhere, throwing the whole theory out the window, so please keep that in mind if that does happen, or if you're trying to solve the timeline placement for yourself. The second point I have to make is that with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, those games take place far at the end of the timeline, at least 10,000 years in the future. All the previous Zelda games are now described as taking place in the era of myth. So far back, it's kind of impossible to tell which legends are true and false, which is basically Nintendo saying some games might not have even happened canonically of the Zelda franchise and are just legends in the canon. Tears of the Kingdom takes place right after Breath of the Wild and are again over 10,000 years in the future compared to games at the end of the respective timelines like Zelda 2, Adventure Link, Four Swords Adventures, and Spirit Tracks. A third point I want to address in relation to the timeline is since a split occurs because of the time travel in Ocarina of Time, I don't see why other splits can't occur from other games with time travel. The other Zelda games with time travel besides Ocarina of Time are Skyward Sword, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, Oracle of Ages, and Tears of the Kingdom. There are also a few non-canon games that could fit into the timeline, such as Hyrule Warriors, which could easily explain the three timelines converging. I'll leave a link to that from a game theory video talking about that. There's also the Age of Calamity game that was made as a prequel to Breath of the Wild, but that's not considered canon because some events contradict what happened in Breath of the Wild. So because time travel also occurs in that game, it's believed that that's also considered a branch timeline, but a non-canon one. So now that I have all of that out of the way with multiple different ideas and possibilities to consider, to simplify things, I'm gonna attempt to place Echoes of Wisdom on the current canon timeline, ignoring the non-canon games and theoretical other timeline splits. But again, that's not to say those aren't possible and aren't something Nintendo might consider addressing in the future. So now let's get into the placement and reasonings for it that I think make the most sense. We have 5 sections to really choose from without creating a new timeline. We have the pre-timeline split era, the adult timeline, the child timeline, the fallen hero timeline, and the era of prosperity. Weapons, character/race appearances, and geography are the main points I'm going to be looking at when trying to determine the placement. So for the pre-timeline split era, this game cannot be before Skyward Sword because Ganon appears at the start of the trailer, and the main villain of Skyward Sword, Demise, is the first incarnation of Ganon/Ganondorf in the timeline. So moving past that, we see the appearance of Castletown in the trailer as well. There's a Castletown in Minish Cap, and the geography somewhat lines up with what we've seen so far, but like I said, Ganon is at the start of the trailer, and after Demise, Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time is said to be the first incarnation of the Demon King, from what I'm aware, so we can pretty much skip past Four Swords and roll out the pre-timeline split era. Next, let's look at the adult timeline. Right after the events of Ocarina of Time, Hyrule gets flooded, so there's absolutely no way that Echoes of Wisdom can take place in between Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, because Hyrule is flooded in Wind Waker. In Wind Waker, though, we do see the Great Deku Tree, and he appears in the Echoes of Wisdom trailer, so that's worth noting. After Wind Waker, there's Phantom Hourglass, which is a direct sequel to Wind Waker, and a still flooded Hyrule, so it's out of the question for that being in between those two games. And 100 years later, Spirit Tracks takes place. In this game, the water levels have receded and a new Hyrule has been constructed. One problem with New Hyrule is that the geography doesn't exactly match up, with the fire biome being in the northeastern region and the snow biome being in the northwestern region, with Echoes of Wisdom being the opposite based on the artwork. On top of this, Ganon appearing in this timeline again doesn't really make sense because the Master Sword was left in his head at the end of Wind Waker. Every other time that the Master Sword was used to kill Ganon, it was placed back in a pedestal and Ganon later appeared. In my opinion, leaving the Master Sword in his head is preventing him from returning in the adult timeline. That's never been said before, but so far that's been the case as he hasn't appeared at any other point. The sword Link uses in the trailer is similar in color to the Locomo sword Link uses in Spirit Tracks, and similar in shape to the Phantom sword from Phantom Hourglass, but in my opinion that's just kind of a coincidence. Another point against this timeline is the appearance of Zoras in the trailer. In the adult timeline, the Zora evolved into the Rito species because of the flooding, so the Zora no longer exists, unless they re-evolve back into the Zora later on. Also, the only Gerudo to appear in this timeline is Ganondorf. So for now, let's cross off the adult timeline. Also, all the games in this timeline use a Toon Link design, so I feel that that's something they would try to keep consistent. But now let's check on the child timeline. Majora's Mask is a sequel to Ocarina of Time with the same Link being in both games, so we have Twilight Princess next. Echoes of Wisdom can't go before Twilight Princess because Ganondorf from Ocarina gets trapped in the Twilight Realm until Twilight Princess. However, Twilight Princess has a castle town and its depiction is similar with a similar fountain. So we do have to keep that in mind. At this point though, geography doesn't match up yet. The next game after Twilight Princess is Four Swords Adventures, and Ganon appears in that game, but it's described in Hyrule Historia that the Ganon that appears in Four Swords Adventures is a second Ganon to appear after the Twilight Princess one. So there's no possible way for Echoes to take place in between those two games. It's possible that the game could take place after Four Swords Adventures, and the maps somewhat line up with the volcano being in the northwest and other mountain area in the northeast. And it's not one for one, but the map in Four Swords Adventures is more of a stylized depiction of Hyrule. In my opinion, this timeline checks out all the boxes with matching geography and the right races and characters appearing, but let's keep going because I feel like there's a better fit. Skipping the Fallen Hero timeline, let's take a look at the Era of Prosperity. Skipping all the way ahead to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, we have Gerudo, Zora, and the Great Deku Tree. The trailer for Echoes of Wisdom is very reminiscent to the opening of Breath of the Wild. Link wears a hooded cloak in the trailer, and the only other time we've seen him with one was in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. People on Twitter were drawing comparisons to Link's bow in the trailer to the Zonai bow from Tears of the Kingdom, and I do have to admit, there are quite a few design similarities with colors and shapes. If we try to figure out a time frame for this, quick spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom by the way, it's explained that 10,000 years in the past, King Rauru sealed Ganondorf and held him there until the events of Breath of the Wild, where he attempted to reincarnate but failed and then fully escaped from the seal in Tears of the Kingdom. From what I know about the Zelda lore, I don't think it's possible for Ganon to appear between these events, so it's possible that the game could take place sometime before that 10,000 year period, or way after the events of Tears of the Kingdom. Impa and other Sheikah appear in the Echoes of Wisdom trailer, similarly to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, so that's another point for this era. The geography doesn't match up, but with as much as it changes, it could eventually get to a point that does match up, but I still feel like there's a better fit. So now we get into the Fallen Hero timeline. The first point this timeline gets is the design of Link. Apart from the era of prosperity with the Hero of Wilds outfit, Link only has ever been seen with the brown sleeves design in the Fallen Hero timeline. The only time Link has green sleeves in this timeline is during Triforce Heroes, but the Link in that game is the same incarnation as the one in Link Between Worlds, so that's already a good start. The Ganon boss fight in this game is supposed to be based off of the one in Link to the Past, although it's clearly not the same, so we could have an alternate telling of that game's ending with another timeline, but I'm not going to think about that. The incarnation of Link in Link to the Past appears in both Oracle games and Link's Awakening, and Link's Awakening got a remaster in the same art style of this game. In the Oracle games, we see both the River Zora and Sea Zora appear, just like in the trailer for Echoes of Wisdom. This is the only time where that really happens. The River Zora are only present in this timeline. Gerudo don't make an appearance in this timeline except in the Oracle games, where Kotake and Koume, the surrogate mothers of Ganondorf, appear. After Link defeats Ganon in Link to the Past, they try to resurrect him in the Oracle games, but their attempt is incomplete and he becomes a mindless beast, to which he is slain by Link. Centuries later, Ganon is resurrected in Link Between Worlds by the villain Yuga and gets fused with Yuga. However, Link easily defeats them. We move from this era of dark and light to the golden era, where the royals use the power of the Triforce to its full potential, bringing prosperity to Hyrule. However, the king grew wary as he was dying and split the power of the Triforce so it couldn't be used for evil. This led to the era of decline. In this era, many tragedies struck, bringing the downfall of the kingdom, eventually leading into the original and second Zelda games. So now that I've told you guys about this timeline, what other supporting evidence is there? Well, apart from the races and characters matching up, the geography matches up insanely well. The maps in Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds match up exactly, and it's said that the map in Zelda 1 and 2 are in the top right portion of the map in the mountain region, which also lines up with the Link to the Past map. On top of that, this Twitter user drew comparisons to the Echoes of Wisdom map and Link to the Past map, and they line up insanely well, like I said, save for the giant volcano on the top left portion of the map, which could have appeared after a long period of time due to tectonic plates shifting in Hyrule, or even some magic. I, however, don't believe that these are the same incarnations of Link, Ganon, and Zelda and any of the other Downfall Timeline games, as Zelda doesn't have the same hairstyle and clothing designs as some of her other counterparts, even though some parts are similar. Same goes with Ganon. They also could be a stylistic choice due to the art style, but I don't think so due to the volcano and the fact that Link isn't using the Master Sword, even though he has access to it in Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds. My best guess right now is that this takes place sometime after the Golden Era, at the start of the Era of Decline, due to both races of Zora appearing and the Sea Zora not appearing in Zelda 1 and 2. The map is also similar enough to where it makes sense. Link not having the Master Sword fighting Ganon also lines up with Zelda 1, as he didn't have it then either. My best guess is that it was lost to time and forgotten about, explaining why he doesn't use it in either games. On top of that, the sword Link does use has similarities to the White Sword and Magical Sword from Zelda 1. So I do think it's possible that the Link we see in this game could be the same one from Zelda 1 and 2, but he probably isn't. I also want to point out that the designs of the sword is different in the footage compared to the official art of the game, with the curves being straight in the art but angled in the game. I Don't know if that means something or if it's just an error, but you heard it from me first if it does mean something. So in conclusion, I think it's a very safe bet to assume Echoes of Wisdom takes place in the Fallen Hero timeline, most likely at the start of the Era of Decline or after Zelda 1 and 2, with the possibilities of it being at the end of the Child timeline or somewhere after the Era of Myth leading into or following Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. All of this again being due to the design similarities, geography, and the right races being present. When Echoes of Wisdom comes out in September, I'll be streaming it here on YouTube. So if you watched this far into the video, I just want to thank you guys for watching. I feel like one giant mark of being a game theorist on YouTube is making a Zelda theory video, trying to make a timeline placement. So I'm just kind of glad that I got the opportunity to do this. My goal of this channel is to try to play through as many Nintendo games as possible, as I want to show games off to people who might not ever have known about them or might not be able to experience playing them. There's also plenty of Nintendo games I haven't played, so it'll be a first for me too. I already streamed Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Prime, and I have a playlist for them I'll link so you guys can check out. I plan on streaming Metroid Prime 4 when that comes out next year too. I'm currently playing through Super Mario Sunshine and streaming that on Saturdays, so pop in and say hi or watch the VODs if that's something you guys would be interested in. After Echoes of Wisdom comes out and I play through all of it, I'll make a full timeline video explaining the Zelda lore, and by that time the Zelda Masterworks art book for Tears of the Kingdom will be out in Japan, so hopefully that'll give more insight into the timeline with Tears of the Kingdom included, making the timeline placement for Echoes of Wisdom even easier. This timeline video will also show how the Zelda franchise connects to the timeline of other Nintendo franchises, like I said earlier in the video, as Link has crossed paths with Mario many times before. I haven't made a full video on this channel in over 2 months, so I sincerely apologize to you guys. I've had a lot of stuff going on, and I've been streaming like I said, and I make shorts, so that's something to have in the meantime. Plus, I upload content on my second channel, Mr. E. I talk about mysteries, cryptids, weird theories, history, and a bunch of concepts like that. I'll link that below, or you can find it on the homepage of this channel at the bottom, or just search it up with this app, if that's something you're interested in. I'll have more time this summer for content, and I have a bunch of videos planned for both channels in the near future, so be on the lookout for that, with the Fortnite storyline video being next for this channel, and a Fearsome Critters follow-up video for the Mystery channel. And please like and subscribe to help the channel grow, and share the channel with your friends as well. I'm approaching 1,000 subs, and the more subscribers, views, and likes I get, the more content I'll be able to fund and produce for you guys. Make sure to leave a comment on your thoughts on this video, where you think Echoes of Wisdom takes place in the timeline, and what your favorite Zelda game is. Thank you guys one more time, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless.